Hi everyone! In this video we're going to show you how we made an 80 centimeter Jesmonite table. Stick around to learn more. Make sure that you have a level table to put your silicone mold on. We advise to have a mixing blade for this kind of quantities, and this one is a Jesmonite mixing blade, the bigger size. This is an 80 centimeter silicone mold, and on the description you can see who created this for us. We use an air compressor to remove dust or to even help unmold. This is the terrazzo that we will use for the table. And here we are just checking if the wood insert that we cut in the beginning, it's going to fit. And we're also going to take these weights to help us level the table. We're using Jesmonite AC100 to make the table. And this means that in terms of ratios, we will need 2.5 parts powder and 1 part liquid. And because it comes shipped like this, we always like to take it out of the bag and put it on a bucket that we can seal. Here we are already mixing the liquid to the powder according to the ratios. And as you see, we are using the mixing blade, and this will really help to remove any clumps. We are using a vibration table to help the bubbles to come up to the surface, so then it will have less bubbles in the mix. We're going to take a part of our Jesmonite mix to another bucket because that part doesn't need to have terrazzo, and you will see later in the video how we are using this. In the part that has the most, we are putting the 1.3 kilos of terrazzo, and we're going to mix all this very thoroughly. When this is all mixed, we are going to go again in the vibration table, and we are going to try to again remove more bubbles. Because if you have a lot of bubbles in the mix, this can be visible in your Jesmonite piece. So less bubbles, better results. Now that everything is mixed, we're going to start our pouring. We always do a first layer so it can cover the full mold, and we are going to remove as much bubbles as possible. So you see here we are spreading out our Jesmonite mix, making a layer across all the mold so we can start bumping it and make sure that we have an even layer. So that's what we're doing now. And because this process takes a little bit of time, we need to do a first layer, and you are going to see throughout the video that we have many phases to this process. It's also important to use retarder. We use the Jesmonite retarder, and the advice of Jesmonite is to use max 2 to 8 grams of retarder per kilogram of mix. So it's not per kilogram of powder or per kilogram of liquid, it's per kilogram of total mix. And we didn't do any cuts on the part of this video, so you can actually see in real time how much time it takes us. And this is a process that we will continue. We also shake this around to make sure that goes everywhere and has that first layer that we were talking about in the beginning. When we are happy with it, of course, you can never know if it doesn't have any bubbles at all, right? So when we are happy with it, we're going to just pour a second layer, and we're also going to shake it a little bit so it goes everywhere and you can actually have an even layer. In a mold like this, it's a little bit difficult, but that's why we're doing this with 2 people. You can do with 1 person, of course. You just add a little bit retarder to make sure that you have more time to work with the Jesmonite, because that's what the retarder is also doing. It helps that the Jesmonite won't start setting immediately and gives you an extra time to work with the Jesmonite, to pour, to remove bubbles, to make sure that your mold is all covered. So that's why we use the retarder. It's almost time to go to the next phase, but first we're just going to pour the remaining Jesmonite mix with terrazzo that we have in this bucket, because the next phase will be to put the wooden insert. We actually didn't measure between this terrazzo mix that we have, and if you remember that we did previously, we also left the Jesmonite mix with just the white without any terrazzo beforehand. We didn't measure it, but we did it a little bit by eye because we're going to use that part in the end of this process and finalize our pouring. But let's wait for that stage. And while one is pouring, we are still going to continue with shaking the mold, because if you already worked with Jesmonite before, you know that bubbles are very annoying. But it's something actually that we need to accept as part of this material. It's a very porous material. With terrazzo, it also traps some bubbles under the terrazzo, and it's also part of the charm of this material. So accept it, you can minimize it, but it's also what makes it unique. Now let's go on to our next phase. We are going to add the wooden insert that we cut previously. So the table is not just made of Jesmonite, but it will also have this wooden part that if you want to attach the feet to the table and screw the feet in, you would drill in the wood and not on the Jesmonite. So here we're making the stabilization, making sure that it's leveled, and also we are moving this around so that the wood can really sink into the Jesmonite that was poured before. Making also sure that we have the same space between the wood insert and the mold. So we cut this with less 5 centimeters. So it has 75 centimeters, which means that you need to have 2.5 centimeters of space. We're also going to add these weights, making sure that it's level. The weights really help to sink in the wood. And now we're going to pour that white Jesmonite that we have in the bucket, because we want to make sure to fill it in until the wood insert. So you can see that there's still a gap between the wood and the Jesmonite, and we are filling it in with just white. So this is the bottom of the table, doesn't need to really have terrazzo, and sometimes the terrazzo pieces just stick over it, so it's better and it's easier to pour it like that. We're also, you can see that we are vibrating a little bit just to make sure that it also goes everywhere in the mold and also reduces bubbles on the side of the table. Now we're just going to go over with a spatula to make sure that we have a few clean lines and we have enough Jesmonite, because we don't want the Jesmonite to be below the wood parts. So it needs to be on the same level. We're also adding a few weights to guarantee that the wood is not going to float up, and we're going to wait for it to set. After around 2 hours, the table has setted, and we're going to remove the table from the silicone mold. This is the first phase of the process. We made our table, but now we still need to finalize it. We will need to sand it to reveal the terrazzo pieces. So we're going to start phase 2. We're using a circular sander and dry sanding, and starting with an 80 grit. From the 80 grit, we're going to go to 120 and then to 320. The last part of the sanding process will be to use a 400 grit, but wet sanding. After 48 hours, we are going to seal our table with Clark stone and concrete wax to make the piece water resistant. We are going to apply 2 layers of this wax sealer, and after it is applied, we are going to remove the excess with a microfiber rag. This is the final result. What do you think? And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this.